Welcome to Laugh Napkin. On today's episode of r/IDontWorkHereLady, an entitled Karen screams at a deaf person in the grocery store. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss another video. And the first story is called, Lady, I'm pretty sure he not only doesn't work here, but is deaf. So after all my experiences with the general public, this has been the craziest, wildest, most dumbfounding thing I've ever seen. I've never experienced someone having a complete and utter meltdown over nothing before. This will probably be a little long. This happened today. I had to pick up some kitty litter and garbage bags on my way home from work, so I stopped at Kroger to get said items. Naturally, I got really distracted and started wandering the frozen aisle as I was struck with the need to get ice cream. I noticed a young man in the aisle with me, mainly because he was fairly attractive. He was a Hispanic guy, tall, and wearing a soccer jersey and sweatpants that had been cut to be shorts, and flip-flops. Like I said, only noticed him because he was cute. But he also seemed very young to me, maybe late teens, early 20s. And as I just turned 30, I noted his hotness, but dismissed it. I was searching ice cream for one that doesn't contain anything I'm allergic to, a time-consuming task unfortunately, when I heard a woman's voice. It took me a minute to realize that the voice was slowly getting louder and louder, repeating "excuse me" with increasing agitation. I looked over, drawn by the loud noise, and saw a woman standing behind the young man. She was looking more and more angry as she kept demanding attention, and I, being the busybody I am, could not look away. She eventually reached out and jabbed her finger in the young man's shoulder. He spun around, and I mean spun around, looking utterly startled. She immediately lit into him. "I've been trying to get your attention forever. How dare you ignore me when you're paid for your bad customer service? I need help." Yada yada yada. I realized with my own slow, dawning confusion and horror, the same emotion you'd feel if you were watching a Chihuahua pick a fight with a St. Bernard or seeing a car crash, that she thought he was an employee. I honestly couldn't look away. The woman was getting more and more angry, and the young man began to flash his hands at her. I realized abruptly that he was deaf. It's pretty obvious. He was pointing at his ears repeatedly and trying to sign. This only infuriated the woman even more, and she started swinging her hands around, saying, "Look, I can do that too. Show me where the frozen pizzas are, dang it." The young man was starting to look really terrified, and I couldn't help but step in. I work in social work, currently with addicts, but before that, I was in foster care, and before that, I was a security guard and a bouncer for years and years, and before that, I was in the military. So I have a strong urge to butt into any and all things that don't involve me if I feel a vulnerable party needs to be protected. I briskly walked up and gently pulled the kid away. I explained curtly, but politely to the woman that he clearly did not work there, and he was most likely deaf. And could she please calm down? She was causing a scene. She accused the young man of lying to get out of doing his job, that he was faking being deaf, and how the hell did I know if he was deaf? I pointed out that he was clearly signing and still was doing so behind me. She challenged me. If he's deaf, tell her what he's saying. I just stared at her. I don't speak ASL. I explained this and point out that it was pretty clear that he can't hear, and could she go piss off somewhere? The brash language triggered her or something, and she attempted to grab me. Besides being a former bouncer, I have PTSD. And if I could walk around with a sign attached to me with big lettering that said "Do not touch," I would. My first instinct was pretty much to slap my hands out, unbalancing her and sending her careening into the nearby glass case. Now, I'm 5'7" and about 160 pounds, and in my office clothing, so I don't look intimidating. But I can be if I want. I squared my shoulders and tried to make myself as big as physically possible. The lady proceeded to lose her absolute self. She started bawling, leaning against the glass case like I've broken her spine or something, sliding down as she kicked her feet against the tile, and screaming and wailing at the top of her lungs. I swear to God, every Kroger employee in that store probably converged on our location in seconds. I quickly explained what was going on to first an employee, and then to the manager, who appeared just as quickly. The manager took one look at me, then the poor kid who just looked like he wanted to die of embarrassment and terror. And then the woman who was still screaming about how I've broken her body. "Call the police." The manager swung about and started rapid-fire signing to the young man, who looked so relieved that he was about to cry. She then turned to the woman and told her in the coldest, most frosty voice I've ever heard in my life that the cops would be called, but it wouldn't be me nor the young deaf man facing their wrath. The woman just stared at her blankly, going completely pale, and then got up and sprinted from the store. The police were called, we filed a complaint, but as she left, there wasn't much we could do. The nice young man emphatically, if a little shakily, signed "thank you," the only sign I really know, and we parted ways, each with a $100 store voucher thing. I drove home and promptly cracked open a bottle of wine, because honestly, what the actual heck? Still in shock. The only thing I could think is that the lady must have some mental issues, but I mainly feel so bad for the kid, being in such a hostile situation with no way to communicate. Poor guy. Story number 2 is called, I Got Fired, then a job offer, and now an old crazy lady is on the internet. This story takes place in a grocery store where I recently stopped to pick up a couple last minute items for dinner. Personally, I hate shopping, but rarely have to do it because my wife generally doesn't mind. We only needed a few items for dinner, so I agreed to stop by on my way home from work. As I'm browsing for the perfect rice to pair with dinner, this older lady approaches me and our conversation went something like this. Old lady, where is the soy sauce? I need soy sauce. I looked around and since we were the only 2 people in the aisle, I realized she was talking to me. Normally I have no problem helping people, especially older people, but this lady used such a rude and entitled tone, I wasn't going to have it. I said, excuse me? Soy sauce. Go get me a bottle. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't work here. Yes, you do. Go get me a bottle of soy sauce. I don't work here. I don't mind helping you out, but you need to ask nicely. Yes, you do work here. Now please go get me a bottle of soy sauce before I tell your manager. That was a little better, but I'm still not going to get that for you until you acknowledge that I don't work here and that I'm doing you a favor. So, you're not going to get it? At this point, I had picked out some rice that would work for dinner, and I put it in my shopping basket. I looked at my basket, and then I look at her. I decided to screw this lady. I say, okay, I'll go get it. Just wait here. I'll be right back. Good. I wasn't going to get it. Instead, I went to get the last 2 items I needed, while wondering how long that lady would stand there. To my surprise, she really didn't stand there long. As I was finishing up at the self-checkout, I noticed her at the customer service desk in front of the register speaking with a manager. This lady was crazy, and I didn't want any real employee to get in trouble when I left her hanging in the aisle, so I bagged up my items and wandered over. I was a few steps away when she noticed me. Old lady pointing at me. There he is! There's the rude employee that wouldn't help me. Manager, he doesn't work here. Yes, he does. I want him fired. The manager and I looked at each other. We had a short talk right in front of her. I told him what happened and that I wanted him to know that he didn't have a rude employee. He was very apologetic to me, like it was somehow the company's fault the crazy lady shops there. And then old lady says to manager, so, are you going to fire him? Manager, I don't know how I would do that. He doesn't work here. Me, you probably just need to look at me and say you're fired. Manager, but you don't work here. Me, yeah, but she doesn't know that. Manager looks at me and says, you're fired. Me, but what about my kids? How am I going to feed the kids? Manager's like, what the F is going on? He says, you have kids? Yeah, I have kids. And now their dad doesn't have a job and they won't be able to eat. Manager, I didn't know you had kids. Well, we do need help if you want to get started stocking shelves. Now I'm like, what the F is going on? I say, just kidding, I don't have any kids. I was just putting on a show for her. Old lady speaking to me. See, that's what you get. After all this, ladies still thought I worked there. Old lady, how's that make you feel? Maybe you'll try a little harder at your next job. Me, I don't care. I don't even work here. I told you that back in the aisle. Manager, yeah, he doesn't work here. Old lady, yes, because I just got him fired. Me, no, you didn't. We just did that as a show for you because you're crazy. I work somewhere else. I've never worked here. Old lady, you don't work here. Me, finally you get it. Like I've said, I've been a long-time lurker, but I knew this was the definition of a story for you all. As I go to leave the store, I say, I'm going to put you on the internet. I'm guessing something about old people not understanding the internet, but She did not like that. Alright guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to check out my r/IDon'tWorkHereLady playlist. It'll be on screen right now. And as always, if you haven't done so already, subscribe for future videos just like this one. And be sure to like the video. I'll see you in the next one.